I used to think all RPGs were basically the same. You level up, get better gear, follow a story, and that's it. Whenever I saw terms like JRPG or Western RPG, I didn't really question it. To me, it was simple. A JRPG just meant an RPG made in Japan. But everything changed when I played Soul Hackers 2. That's when I realized I didn't actually understand what I was playing. At that moment, a simple question popped into my head. What's really the difference between a JRPG and a Western RPG? So I started looking into it. And while researching, I found a lot of people who had the same idea as me. But after digging a bit deeper, I realized that this idea doesn't really hold up. For example, Child of Light is considered a JRPG, but it's made by Ubisoft, a Western studio. And then you have Dragon's Dogma, which is made in Japan, but often described as being Western RPG inspired. By the way, keep this in your mind. So clearly, the naming is not about location, it's about something else. What is it? It's about design philosophy. After going through different examples, I managed to simplify the main differences into 3 points. First, the main character. Western RPGs usually give you freedom. You create your own avatar, choose how they look, and sometimes even shape their personality through dialogue choices. A good example is Skyrim, where the game gives you a world and lets you decide how to live in it. In contrast, JRPGs usually have a predefined protagonist. The character already has a name, a personality, and a role in the story. You are not creating the character, you are following their journey. Second, gameplay. Most JRPGs are turn based, where combat happens in structured order. On the other hand, Western RPGs often lean toward real time combat. You attack, dodge, move freely, and your skill as player has more impact. When we talk about gameplay differences, we are talking about general tendencies, not strict rules, because it's not always the case. For example, Divinity Original Sin 2 is a Western RPG, but its combat is fully turn based. Third, structure. JRPGs are usually more linear. You follow a predefined story, meet characters, and progress in a clear direction. While Western RPGs give you more freedom, you can explore the world or even ignore the main story completely and create your own path. At this point, I thought I had a clear understanding of RPGs, but instead, I ended up falling into a deeper hole. New terms kept appearing, and things started getting confusing again. That's when I realized that these two are just a small part of a much bigger system. There are other RPG types that focus on different aspects, so I simplified it again. Action RPGs. These games focus heavily on real time combat while still keeping RPG systems like leveling, gear, and progression. Games like Diablo 3 or Elden Ring are good examples. What's the difference between an ARPG and a Western RPG? A Western RPG is more of a design philosophy, while an ARPG describes the gameplay system, how the game actually plays. So they are not opposites, they can overlap. For example, you can have a Western RPG that also uses action combat, like The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. And you can also have a JRPG with action based gameplay, like Kingdom Hearts. So, ARPG is not a separate category from JRPG or Western RPG. It's more of a gameplay layer that can exist inside both. That's why I told you earlier to keep this in mind. Dragon Dogma is actually labeled as an action RPG, but it includes a lot of Western RPG design elements open world, player freedom, even how the quests are structured. At the same time, it doesn't go all the way in that direction. There are almost no meaningful dialogue choices, and the story doesn't really branch. So it feels like a Western RPG, but it doesn't fully commit. Anyway, it's about as close as you can get to a Western style RPG made by a Japanese studio. There are also MMORPGs, which are online RPGs where you play with other people in a shared world. Games like World of Warcraft focus on long term progression, cooperation, and sometimes competition. The experience is less about a single story and more about the world and the players in it.
But wait! There's more!
CRPG, which stands for Computer RPG, is a type of RPG inspired by old tabletop role playing games. These games usually focus on deep systems, complex choices, and very detailed world. A good example is Disco Elysium. In CRPGs, you usually have a lot of freedom in how you solve problems and how the story reacts to your decisions. They are often slower paced, but in return, they give you a very high level of control over the experience. Then you have tactical RPGs. This is more of a combat system than a story structure. Tactical RPGs focus on strategy and positioning, usually on a grid instead of a real time action. You take turns, move units, and plan each decision carefully. A very well known example is Fire Emblem Three Houses. Here, the focus is less on reaction speed and more on planning and positioning. So, to make it simple, think of it like this. CRPG describes how the RPG is designed overall, things like narrative, depth, system, and player choice, while TRPG describes the combat style inside the game. That means a game can be both. For example, Baldur's Gate 3 is a CRPG because of its deep systems, branching choices, and reactive storytelling, but it also uses turn-based tactical combat, which make it feel like TRPG during gameplay. Kind of similar to how ARPG describes combat style, while Western RPG or JRPG describes the overall design philosophy. Now, here where things get more interesting. We can actually combine these categories. For example, CRPG, ARPG hybrid, like Dragon Age Inquisition, Western RPG, TRPG hybrid, like Westland 3, or a JRPG TRPG hybrid, like Final Fantasy Tactics. So, if we look at the bigger picture, these categories don't compete with each other, they overlap. RPG is not a single type of game, it's more of a foundation. Different games can take that foundation and build on different parts of it. Some focus on story, some focus on freedom, some focus on combat, and some try to combine everything. And that's why two RPGs can feel completely different even if they share the same label. For me, understanding this actually changed how I look at this type of games. Now, when I start an RPG, I don't jump in blindly. I try to understand what type is it first, so I know what I should expect from it. Anyway, that's it for this episode of Brainless Noobs. Thank you for watching, and sorry if my English isn't perfect, it's my first time speaking it out loud. See you next time.